guys, it's Natasha, pronounced Natasha. I'm back again with the 6th video in my Knockout Girl video series. It's the book that you've seen in every single one of my videos because when I shelve my books, they look like this. So of course today we are talking about Hooked. Assuming you've read the rest of the series, have you read this book? If you haven't read it yet, go ahead and read it. It's very short. I'll wait. Okay, now that you've read it, did you love it? Because I loved reading it, and I don't pick favorite characters, but if I had a favorite couple, Darren and Sophia would be like way up there. Also, if you happen to have picked up a paperback of this one, thank you so much. I put a lot of work into all of my covers, and I loved the back image here. We've got our boxers on the front and our fancy shoes on the back, so there's that. I just had to let you guys know in case you didn't have a paperback version. So let's talk about Darren and Sophia. First of all, you've met them before. You probably know that, but just in case you don't remember, Sophia is from Stand Up Guy. We saw her when she first fought Ellie at an exhibition match, and Ellie beat her. And I'm assuming after that, Sophia was like, well, that's not happening again. And she actually won the ABO championship against Ellie. So Ellie came in second, Sophia came in first, and she did get that scholarship to go to university. And of course, we meet her at U of T in Hooked. And then, of course, Darren is from the B-Boy. We first see Darren, again, he got to be in 2 fights in the books. I just realized that they both had 2 fights in there when we first see them. So we first see him when he fights against Red. Darren's coach pays Red to lose against Darren, and of course Red took that money at the time because he needed it for those fancy dance costumes. The second time Red fought him, he beat him because he didn't want to take the money and because he knew that he could beat him. And Darren was pretty upset about that, and one of the last things Red said to him was, get yourself a better trainer and come back and fight me. And I think Darren really took that to heart. So he explains in Hooked to Sophia that he was curious about what was meant by that. And we find out that Darren didn't know that his coach was paying people to lose to him. This is something that can really, really shatter a person's self-confidence and a person's image about themselves. So he finds out that his coach had been doing that. His coach had basically been told, make sure Darren wins. And as we know, there are 2 people in the world. So one type of people might have said, okay, we'll make him the best boxer we know how to do. And of course, his coach was the type that said, okay, we'll pay to make sure that he wins because that's what I've been told to do. So that's what had been happening. And so he fires his coach and he seeks out Sophia. And turns out Sophia, her career management is a little bit lacking. She does have a manager, but she doesn't have very good connections. She's not wealthy by any means, not like Darren, who is quite affluent. So she's got a manager, but it's really not working out very well for her. And Darren can see this because he finds it very hard to track her down, but lucky him, she happens to be in his psychology class. So he begs her to teach him how to box better and tells her the story about his coach, and that's what makes her agree because she feels so bad that had been happening to him. So she agrees, and he, in exchange, because she doesn't want to take his money, he offers to find her some connections and teach her a few things about really selling herself as a person, which is something that he is actually good at. Regardless of how much money he is, he's very confident in himself, or at least he was confident when he thought that he was a stellar boxer. So that starts off a beautiful friendship and a beautiful romance. So there we go. No, there's more to the story. So Sophia explains how after she won the ABO, it was a big deal. It should have given her a lot of opportunities and opened up a lot of things for her. But she feels like her thunder had been a little bit stolen by Ellie, who, after the men's side of the tournament, went up into the ring and, of course, kissed Julie. And it was really cute, and everybody loved it because love stories really sell. As I would know, because I write love stories. So yeah, love stories really sell, and Ellie kind of stole her thunder without meaning to at all, because Ellie, I don't think, would ever do that on purpose. So Darren says, well, let's help you figure this out. Let's do something about it. And he buys her a dress, a cheap one, because she won't go for something really expensive. And he takes her out to a fancy ball or whatever it is, a fancy party. And by the way, if you haven't seen my video on fancy, go watch it. I use that word way too much. So anyway, they go to a fancy thing, and they're dressed up fancy, and they're really fancy, and he's really fancy. So, but while they're there, he mistakenly decides that in order to steal some of her thunder back, he's going to kiss her in front of all of these new people that he's introduced her to. It's really not made clear in the book whether it's the kiss or whether it was the introductions that open up some doors for her, but at the time, she's pretty upset that it happens. She even thinks to herself, if he had done it because he liked her, that would be one thing. She could tolerate that. But because he did it because he said he was just trying to help her out, that really didn't go with her. That didn't fly. She didn't like that. And she thought that was a bad reason to just kiss her in front of a whole bunch of people she barely knew. So they have this big argument over it, and they both feel pretty terrible. And he apologizes in a weird way, but in kind of a cute way. And she accepts the apology, and they kind of decide to start over. And he says, "I'll never kiss you again." And of course, inside, she's like, wait, do I really want that? But she says, "Oh, sure, you'll never kiss me again." So anyway, after that, she takes him to her family's, yearly barbecue that they have in November. And she says, usually we have like a little boxing fight, and it's not regulated, so you might get hurt, but it's kind of fun. And it's also because it's meant to be fun, maybe he can relax a little bit and actually do a good job. And meanwhile, she's been training with him and trying to teach him how to be better. One of his weak spots is that he's slow, so she's working with that. So she takes him to meet her family, and it's big and loud, and everybody is it's big and loud and chaotic, but also really fun. For anybody who's grown up in a huge family, you know what that's like. Lots of music, lots of playful horseplay, that kind of thing. But of course, her ex-boyfriend is there for no reason other than just to be a thorn in her side. And when she says, "Hey, do you want to fight him or fight my cousin?" Darren's like, "Yeah, I'll fight your ex-boyfriend." And the fun part about it is that he wins. I actually had I had a hard time writing that scene because I was so tired of writing about boxing by the time I got to Hook that I was like, I want to write this book, but I'm so tired of boxing. And I think it was one of the last things I wrote because there's only so many ways you can say that somebody punched somebody, but I got through it. I think I did a good job with it. You can let me know what you think of that, but I thought I did a good job. So anyway, he wins. And she likes that, not just because he won, but because he also kind of meshed with her family, even though it's so totally different than his own family or his own experiences with people. And then after that, he invites her to meet his parents because his parents are curious about this new girl that people keep seeing him with. Because they always want to know who's the new gold digger he's got. And he says, "She's not a gold digger. She's not my girlfriend. She's actually coaching me." It's hard to convince people of that kind of thing when everybody can tell you're totally in love with them, but it is what it is. So anyway, she goes to dinner at his parents' house, and it's quiet. There's not a lot of people because it's just his parents and him and her. And of course, they ask her a bunch of questions. And probably they genuinely, she says it afterwards, your parents genuinely love you and they care about you, and that's why they do crazy things like pay for your matches to be thrown or something like that, right? And that's probably also why they're totally grilling her because, again, his mom is afraid of him just always having a string of gold-digging girlfriends, which Sophia obviously isn't. And I think they recognize that. You can kind of tell that they really like her at the end of the night. And then, of course, at the end of the night, he takes her to the backyard because she's like, "Let's get some fresh air." And they get a little bit close, and he says to her, "We never said you couldn't kiss me." And I love that part. I'm sorry. It makes me giggle, but I love that part because I think it's really cute. So she does kiss him. And then actually I have a quote from right after that happens where Darren starts the next chapter, and he says, "I never meant for this to happen. I was trying to find my footing, not lose my heart. Yet here I am handing it over to a girl I only met a few weeks ago." I like the way that's worded because it kind of felt like a little bit of a boxing reference, but also it's cute. It's cute and I like it. So he found his footing and he also lost his heart, and I like that a lot. So yeah, after that we get into, you know, he gets invited to a match where he can fight against a bunch of guys, including Julian, and she gets invited to a gala for women in sports, which is really interesting. And she says, like, I don't belong there. And actually I have another quote from her. She says, I don't belong in something like that. I just don't belong in those kinds of places, because she thinks that she doesn't belong fancy places, elegant places, you know. But he says, I wish you'd realize that wherever you are is where you belong. You're meant to be here wherever that is, and you certainly belong at a gala for women in sports. What did you think you've been doing with your life exactly? And I think that really strikes a chord with her, because, you know, it is very true. She does belong at a place like that. So anyway, we get to see, again, one more boxing match. Well, a few, but one more big boxing tournament where Darren does surprisingly well. I guess surprisingly for him, but she has a lot of confidence in him, and I think it's her confidence in him that really helps him out. And at the end of it, he actually beats Julian, who is supposed to be the best boxer in all of Ontario, because he won a tournament for all the best boxers in Ontario. So it's this big moment for them. And of course, while they're there, she gets to see Ellie again, and Ellie is, as we've mentioned before, the type of person to ship the first two people she sees, and she totally can tell something's going on, but, you know, she kind of keeps that to herself. But yeah, it's really cute. So so I was excited, and I was happy that I got to bring Julian and Ellie back into the story. I also got to bring Red back into the story, because at one point Sophia makes Darren go to Red's gym and confront him and say, like, fight me again properly. And Red's like, oh geez. But Red, of course, we know, is more than willing to help anybody for any reason. Like, he's bromancing all over the place. So anyway, they do fight. He says, you know, you've gotten a lot better. And then he says, I've got something else I'm doing. Which, if you put two and two together, that was he had to go and skate with Adrian. So, yeah, there was that. So he says, I've got something else I'm doing, but come see me in the new year. Which I think is a really neat thing. Like, I kind of imagine that, like, they become friends after that. I don't know. Maybe they do. But I think that's kind of cute. Actually, Darren, now that I think about it, Darren and Red have a lot in common. You know, they're the only ones in their family. Like, they don't have any siblings. They're both like, super duper into boxing. They could really make a good friendship. They probably are really good friends after the book. I'm not going to lie. It only just occurred to me. I wrote these characters. It only just occurred to me. So anyway, there's that. So after the boxing tournament, they go to this gala for women in sports, and it turns out Sophia's actually getting an award for being a really great boxer, because she's a really great boxer. And at the very end of the book, Darren says, quite simply, I've always been told not to mix business and pleasure, so I'm firing you, and I'm choosing love over boxing. And she's like, whoa. In that case, I'm firing you too as my manager. And he's like, what? And she's like, yeah, because I want that too. And they're like, okay. And then 2 seconds later, like, but I still want to help you. And I think it's this really cute moment where, you know, in stories, we want to believe that you can mix business and pleasure, and you can have the best of both worlds, and you can have everything that you want. And that's the great thing about writing fiction, is that anything you want to happen, so long as it feels realistic enough, can happen. So I hope you felt like this was a very nice conclusion to the Knockout Girl series. I know this book was kind of like a little bit outside of the main storyline and outside of the main characters, but that's what I loved about it. I loved getting into the heads of two side characters that obviously deserve to have their story told and also deserve to find each other. So I loved writing this book. I loved these characters. They turned out so much better than I thought they would. It turns out, like, every time I start thinking more and more about a character who feels like they're a terrible person, and I delve a little bit deeper, I realize they're not terrible. People just sometimes make mistakes, and characters make mistakes, and it turns out there were reasons for that, and they can make those amends. So that's what I loved about this book. So I hope you enjoyed it too. I hope you enjoyed the whole series. If you did read the whole series, thank you so much for going on this journey with me. Like I said, I really enjoyed writing all of them. I really enjoyed having people's feedback and comments and all your wonderful reviews for the story, and I really hope that I'll be able to keep writing so many more wonderful stories that you guys will love so much. So again, thank you so much. I'll catch you next time. I don't know if I'll do more of these videos for my other books, but if enough people like them, I might consider it. Thank you.